Alright, how's it going, everyone? This is Anon. None of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. Excuse me. Alright, let's get everything started. Oh, hold on 1 second. That's weird. Popped up on my phone for some reason. Okay, let's go and make sure this got pushed out to the Discord. I see some people are coming in now. Let's do this. Load Discord real quick. Don't switch. Oh, that's right. I had to log in very quickly, and I was trying to program some bots. I'm trying to learn Python so I can help improve our little community, see if we can get some data scraping going and write some stuff up. But give me a second, I need to scan the QR code. There we go. Log me in. All right, here we go. Okay, I guess it hasn't pushed it out to the Discord yet for some reason. All right, do we have anyone talking yet? Can you guys hear me? That's so weird. I'm not sure why it's not pushed it out to the Discord. Huh. Well, we had a bot that was supposed to do that, but I guess I will go ahead and do it manually. What's up, Earthium? How are you, bud? Just you and me right now, because the thing didn't kick it out to the Discord for some reason. What's up with this? There's supposed to be a bot that does this. I'm trying to remember which the bot was under. Excuse me. General markets bad, even with good news on ATER, it goes down. Yeah, so the overall market right now, so if you compare like IWM, which is the like small cap Russell, they looked exactly like our chart for today. So we can take a look at that in a second. But yeah, we're just going to go down while they're, there's not a whole lot you can do. Oh, you know what the problem is? Because I changed the name on here. Paxton. All right. So we're going to just have to add everybody. Because I don't think it was set up like this. All right, here we go. Now it's set up, but I guess it was not working at the time, so we're going to have to just manually do this. Give me a second. Excuse me. any tickers? Come ask any questions on any tickers or general questions. All right, there we go. Do you think ATER will go sub 1 for us to load up again? Yeah, I do at this point right now. Because if you kind of look at momentum, so I just wanted to kind of show you guys something. This is something we haven't looked at in a while because there really hasn't been a whole lot of divergence on ATER, but I just want to show you this particular thing. Do you guys remember when we used to look at this and look at the money flow? So green, if you guys remember this, green bar was the money flow, right? So money would flow in, right? And you can, this is COVID, right? So this is the COVID crash. And then you see down here, money was flowing out and then money started flowing back in slowly, right? So this green and white line, the white line is OBV, on balance volume. And then this cash flow or money flow is the one, so you can see money flowing into the market, right? So there was money flowing into the market. The stock prices were all going up on the SPY, right? And you can see it remains high, and it gets up to the peak right here, and then actually, technically, this is the peak, right? So right here is the peak. So you can see that all these lines are pretty much up here. Now, the interesting that's happened, sorry, someone wrote stop. You can... What was that? Where did my comment go? What was that? Yeah, sorry about that. Somebody wrote and was like, stop. If you need a walkthrough, we can do that. Okay, here we go. So random's on here. Johnny's with us. Hola. Or you put aloha. And then, okay, so you want short interest, please, and thank you. On which one? And on, we can't see what you're talking about. You can't see this chart? Can you guys see any of this? Or is it too... Keith's in here with us. What's up, Keith? Okay. I have it on this... maybe turn up the resolution random, because I was going to say, I can see it on mine, but... yeah, this is the SPY. So, in this case right here, you've got money flow, and you've got on balance. That's the white and green line right here. And you can see it gets up to these peaks right here, and then you can see this is the absolute peak. This is like 480 on the SPY. And then as you see right here, what you notice is the money flow starts actually coming out, right? So if you follow these two lines that are basically running together, the on balance and the money flow, money's been flowing out since basically January of this year. And in fact, we're getting down to the lower levels of that, despite the stock price actually not going down that much. So most of the smart money is pretty much like gone at this point. And I think that all the people that are left are basically just long holders just sitting there. It looks like if you look, and I'll zoom in here, as you can see, the money flow has been out, right? So they pumped this up on this rally here, and I'll compare it here on the other chart that I made, but they basically broke through this downtrend on very low volume, not actually doing anything. Like there's not a lot of volume that pushed this thing through, which is interesting because it looks like they're setting up for a big move at this point. And I'll show you right here. So in the past, right, since we hit this peak right here, right, the 480 on the SPY, we've consistently respected this downtrend up until the last couple like weeks, right? So this right here was back in December. They tried to gap it up and it got pushed back down, right? And then it pushed through, and we thought it was going to reject around here because it actually came down this day, and then they gapped it up and they kind of ran with it, right? And I thought they were going to try to close this 421 gap, but what's ended up happening is this. They actually left another gap now here, and they pushed it down. So now you've got two gaps up here, and we're still kind of in this no man's land, because if you kind of look at what's going on here, like if it continues to drop down, you now have to see if this is going to act as support or if this is going to act as a resistance. And we kind of have to like take a look at this thing now from like a new perspective, which is this wasn't an uptrend that I thought was going to come up and fill up the 421 gap. And instead, it broke down, and now it's chopping in this like no man's land, because like we don't have a new chart to, we can, I guess, I can draw out some new lines, but at this point right now, this is where I think it might have even been a bull trap, and I even put it right here a couple weeks ago, that like this was basically the last hurrah before we get to see some of these levels down here. And this would be the next one to actually fill, which is right here around the 338 to 340 level. So there you go. So, I mean, you've got a ton of bull gaps down here that have never been filled. And then you've got now two gaps above, which have not filled either. So we're in this weird spot right now where we're kind of chopping, and we haven't had a significant push down recently until basically today. So something to keep our eye on, because what would be really interesting is to see if it bounces here, comes back up, fills this, and then we go, or if it comes here and there's more support and it keeps pushing up. That would be a surprise to the market, obviously, because most people are anticipating, the market to have some problems as we're, tightening. And wouldn't it be interesting to see if it ran back up? Now, we're not sure what's going to happen at this point, but yeah. All right, so let me take a look at the chat. All right, let me go back up here. So Johnny's here. I see SPY. Okay. Okay, can see. All right, so we can't see who you're responding to. Sorry about that. I think short interest, he meant Silvergate, not short interest. Okay, sorry about that. You wanted the ticker SI. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we can do that one. So we'll make a little list and we'll kind of go through them. So let's do this. Maybe I can open like a notepad or something. All right, let's try this out. Why is it so big? All right. So when you look up at SI, ATER, GNS I saw. Wood. Or you're just saying wood evening. Good evening. Okay, that's not a ticker. All right. So Keith agrees with me. He thinks it's a bill trap or a bull trap. Hustle's in here. What's up, man? You should change your name to Woody. All right, so Random's in here. Greg's in here. What's up, guys? Okay. We got NYC Giants in here. So if you think this was a bull trap, do you think today's downtrend has to do with inflation and rates? Yeah, so I think the best way to look at it is this. So Wall Street loves to do what everyone else. Wall Street loves to burn money, as far as in, like, there's a lot of people that play options, right? So when you see, for example, everyone else was getting super bearish down here, what did they do? They pumped it up, right? And then when everyone was getting bullish, what did they do? They pushed it down. And then everyone's expecting it to keep going down to make a lower low. And what do? They broke it through the previous resistance, and they pushed it all the way up into this bull trap level. We don't know. I should say, we think a bull trap level. What could happen is it could bounce off here, head back up, and we could go back up. Like, I think at this point right now, the short-term levels to look for in the meantime are going to be probably around the 390s level. If we pushed it out a couple days, maybe it takes a couple days, we could say like the high 380s. Another place to watch is 408 and 14 cents. That's where the gap fill would be for this one. And if it really got bullish, we could see it up at 421. Down here on the other side, the next pivot point would be if it broke back down into this channel. What we would see is we'd probably be looking for it eventually to make a lower low around probably the 340s. So those are kind of like the immediate ones to watch on the SPY. It's one of those, though, that at this point right now, I bought puts here and I bought puts here because I had been respecting these things. And, this one obviously worked out, but I missed the timing on the bottom. And I thought, okay, well, we'll have another shot at it because I bought, like a year out theta on some of them. And it's not been that way. In fact, my puts have all been bleeding. So... because I missed this bottom here because I thought it was going to go slightly down and fill this gap, and I didn't sell because I was sick that morning. And by the time I actually got around, it was down 3% pre-market, and then it pushed up 3%. So it did like a 6% swing that day. So do you think the opposite of consensus, what's going to happen? I think at this point right now, everyone thinks the bear case, as far as like everyone knows it's going to go down at some point. Like, I just want to show you this again. If we zoom out a bit, right, we're on the daily right here, right? But look at this. Since the peak up here in January, this green and yellow or white line has been basically gone from like the highest points up here at the peak down to near the lowest parts right here. That's money flow. Money is not flowing into the SPY, but they're still pushing up the price. So what does that tell me? It looks to me like they're basically just burning calls at this point and burning puts whenever they can. So it doesn't matter whether you're on this swing of it or this swing of it. Whenever everyone gets one way on a trade, they do the opposite. So if everybody was getting bearish around here, around here, around here, they're going to push it up. And whenever everyone gets bullish, they're going to push it down. Like, in the meantime, until something catastrophic happens, they're going to burn money each way because they can make money each week. Yeah, I mean, like, everybody is... Here's the truth. Everybody knows it's going to go down at some point. The question is when. Like, there are bulls that, can make a case like, oh, we're going to have another, at least rally for a while before the reg gets pulled. But, like, there's nothing... Like, interest rates keep going up, right? So the Fed keeps raising rates. So that's not bullish. At this point, the economy is still pretty strong, which means that they're going to keep having to tighten. If the economy was like falling apart right now, then they probably have to be like, okay, maybe we need to pause. But because the economy is so strong and the labor market's so strong, they keep having to be like, okay, well, we're going to have to keep going until this eventually slows down and we cut some job growth. Like, that's not bullish, but the stock market is not responding that way. The stock market is basically doing the opposite of what the Fed is saying. So the Fed keeps going like, okay, guys, well, this is what we think is going to happen. And we're just doing the opposite of it. So we touched 398 today. I'm holding my puts into tomorrow, wanting to see how tomorrow opens. If we did, yeah, I mean, you could see another gap down at this point. The next logical place would be down here at this 390 level right there. So that would be a bounce point if it was to continue down. Or it's going to chop around a bit and it'll take a little bit longer, and then you could see maybe the high 380s. But that's kind of where I'm looking at this point. You can see right now, go back to this. The RSI has completely just downturned in the last couple of days, and I'll just show you this. So your RSI right here bounced off the high and now is down here in the middle. It's not oversold yet, but you can see right here, the MACD, it crossed over right here. So on the 16th, which was... that was Thursday of last week. That's where the MACD crossed over, or maybe it was right here on the 15th. But either way, the MACD crossed over, and now you're looking at like a downswing. You can see right here on the CCI that this basically just got squashed, and then today was the big sell-off, right? So you're going to see the awesome oscillator switch to the other side. You're going to see the TTM squeeze switch to the other side, and you're going to get a downswing like this, where, you get a push down, it crosses over, you kind of bottom out at certain days, right? This was 375, and then it swung back up, and then it swung hard, basically running from 375 all the way up to 419. So there you go. But yeah, there's too many things not going the SPY's way. It's just not responding the way that everyone thinks it would. Like if you have logic and common sense, you can see like we just hit a pivot point and now it's breaking down. So I expect to see more downward pressure and then getting back into this channel here. Oops, where is it? Getting back into this channel down here. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think this was just a bull trap, and then it breaks down, and then we eventually fill this level. Now, could we fill one of these in between now and, we fill this? Sure. So nobody knows at this point, but all the indicators are showing you that things are going south at this point. And that means a lot of our accounts, if you're long, most of your positions are going to get beat. Like they're going to take a beating over the next couple of days or weeks. These downswings don't feel very good. I watched my own account swing like tens and hundreds of thousands at from here to here. Like it's not a good feeling watching that. And it's one of those things where I play some options on the side to try to hedge some things. And then if I make money on them, I'll sit there and hold on to either cash or put it on something else. Boyle was one of those that I thought I found the breakout and I missed on it because, you can't predict some of these things. Like, I don't know if you guys track natural gas, but like natural gas futures, you're sitting here now at like basically 2. And if you look at the year to date, this thing went from basically like $10 to now almost 2. And over the last year, it's a 60% down. And there's been like no reprieve. Like you had these little dead cat bounce right here, but like for the most part, this thing's been basically just going down. And that's because it's a warm, summer. But talk about catching a falling knife. You had this reprieve here, and I've been tracking this for a while. And I finally thought we had that little breakout. So over the last month, we had this like slight uphill, and I was like, okay, so this is it. This is the breakout. We've already had things. It's double bottomed, and now it's even bled off even more. So, there's a lot of things that are going to be eventually recovering, but it's just, now I'm down 50% on my options. And my call spreads, I'm down, not as much because it was a spread at least. But, that's how these things go. Like, sometimes trying to time a bottom or a top is super hard. And, you can be good at this and still miss. I've had people I've talked to, were buying it back in the 3s thinking that was way too low because, you sit here and you look at this chart and you go, okay, well, you're making lower lows, lower lows, lower lows. Eventually it's going to reverse. So there. Okay, let's see. What does that mean for ATER? Okay, so Yeah, and Keith was saying his, you're in transportation and his industry is also taking a beating. There's a ton of industries that are all cutting earnings, earning reports, and things do not look good for the future. But you wouldn't know that looking at the SPY over the last month. So I do think at some point there will be a reversal on this thing, but it's just been a falling knife. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read these articles for you guys, but there's a bunch of industries that are going to take a beating over the next couple of weeks. That means that most of them, so if we want to cover, for example, Ethereum, you have to look at this today, right? So let's change this up from a 1 day to a 15-minute. So if you see right here, we left a big gap here, right? We gapped down. We're sitting here. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick at Ethereum on the 15-minute, right? Okay, I have to zoom out a bit because I have to figure out where I am. Okay, here we go. Right? So if you look, we just got pushed down, and at the end of the day, we pushed up. So the IWM, you just got pushed down severely today, and then basically at the end of the day, you had a little spike, but for the most part, they finished down too. So we followed basically the IWM, which means that because I think we're getting really low volume on Ethereum, you're basically just following along with algos that are selling. So the way this works is this. I'll put it on the 5-minute because I think it's a better view for Ethereum at least. So you can at least see. I mean, and you can see these liquidity gaps. We gap down. What was the price here? So this was I guess after hours. These jumps around. And these happen because the bid-ask spreads are pretty far apart, and there's not a lot of volume. So when you start having low volume, along with this, Ethereum announced something positive today, and it got smacked down. So I mean, I think this was in the afternoon. This was in the evening, right? So this is all pre-market right here, right? The 16th into the 17th. And then this right here was the start of Tuesday. So from Friday after hours, it pushed all the way down to 121, jumped up, I guess, was that today in the afternoon? No. Today's the 22nd, right? 21st, okay. Was that right? Did it push up in the afternoon? I don't remember pushing up in the afternoon. Am I looking at the right thing? Let's type in ATER real quick. Did we push up this afternoon? Daily 5. I know in the end of the day we did, but 2 o'clock did we push up? I guess we did have a little spike up. Right there, right? I mean, I guess that was from the low of 117, so everything's relative. There's something to say about certain sectors getting beat up right now. Sector rotation, we're coming out of inflation. Yep. Random is absolutely correct. Markets are going to crash, and they will blame AMC apes. I think they're going to blame more than just AMC. I think it's going to be a combination of retail in general. I actually think right now the most interesting one is GameStop. I know right now. So here's the deal with AMC. All right. Target sitting on inventory. So is Ethereum. There's a bunch of these companies that are all sitting on expensive inventory that they weren't able to sell through. Things are not good right now. And most of us are going to take a beating on our accounts over the next couple of weeks if it does go down the way we think it is. That's just the plain and simple truth. So, you can do whatever strategy you want that works for you. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. I'm just here talking about the markets, and that's what we do. So let's take a look at this real quick. So Tyrion right here had this nice run up, right? We basically ran from, what was it, 67 cents or something like that. If I put it on the 1 hour. What was our low? We got all the way down to, let me put it on, I guess, the 4 hour. Here we go. This was the low, right? Didn't it hit like 67 cents? Then it ran all the way up to 182 or 179, something like that. And then there was a bunch of selling. So getting back to Ethereum, there's two things we need to kind of talk about and consider, right? The first thing is that we understand now at least the whole deal with Armistice. So Armistice, we were trying to figure out before, how are they going to unload like 6 million shares when they already have like 17 million in warrants between the two strike prices? And we were like, maybe they have to run it up first and then bring it back down, and they can push it back up. This makes a lot more sense. Excuse me. I found a gummy bear. There's a gummy bear that my kid had left on a plate next to my desk, and yeah, it tastes good. Okay. Scotch and gummy bears, like Archer, right? Okay. So let's go over this. We'll go over the Armistice stuff. Bring it over to you. All right. So this clarifies at least, because I know I need to write the DD on this. I hadn't been able to yet, but I will. Okay. So here's the deal. We've all known these warrants are on the table, right? There's 10 million warrants at $2. Those aren't unlockable until April 4th. I drew it out on this chart right here. If I go to the daily, we can see it better. One day. Okay. If I go to auto, that should fix it. Here we go. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see this. I think that should be here. No, this is here. Oh, that's what I did. I put it up at $3 because that was what their price target was. But I'll put it here on this marker. So that's $3 right there. Okay. So we're down here, right? So we had this nice run up here, right? We left a little gap here. So we do need to fill this at some point, which we're not that far away from there. So we could see a thing where it bounces down and then we start making our way back up. Because here's the deal. They may not touch these up here yet. They may just go for these $2 warrants, which are right here. And they can start hitting those once, for example, once you get past the screen bar, which is April 4th, Armistice can unlock these warrants. We are here. So in the past, we thought they might have to run it up first, and then they would sell off, and then they can unlock the warrants again. Gummy he picked up off the floor was a gift from BBBY. It was a melted crayon. You guys are funny. At least Armistice isn't Hudson. Yeah, I mean, so we don't have preferred convertibles. That would be very bad if we did. So in this case right here, these are just regular warrants. And what we know from this right now is that essentially they can unlock these $2 warrants right here. $2 warrants right here. These are the two. This is $2 right here. This is what they paid for them. So we know Armistice paid $1.90 for them, which is a built-in profit of 10 cents per basically warrant that they convert. So say, for example, the stock price is $2.30, right? So we'll say it's like $2.30, which is up here. They would profit from $1.90 all the way up to $2.30. So the higher they push it for temporarily, the more they make on this run. So this is kind of like the immediate, like, okay, are they going to push it up over this one, or are they going to go for it all? And because once they get past this line, anytime they do anything after this, they have access to the 17 million shares that they have combined between the two. You've got 10.5 here, and you got 7 right here. So that's 17 million shares that they convert. Now, they are not profitable on, they can't unlock these until 320, and they also can't profit on these ones until it's over 190. So with the stock price being 121, it's still lower than what these guys are going to have to push it up through. So if you were to be brand new to this play and you were just looking at this, you would know that at some point, if you were buying down here in the 120s, the stock price has to be over this line just for them to profit. So it's pretty obvious at some point they will push this up again. It's just a matter of when and how high. The next thing we need to talk about is the 6 million shares that they sold, which is interesting. And I have a question that I want to get an answer to at some point, which is this run right here, when they basically issued out these warrants. We don't know when they sold it off, but we can assume basically what it did, because I think it was this one right here where this is where they announced it, right? So the stock had just announced that they were going to beat on revenues. They leaked that out. Stock ran up to 214, and then we had this huge amount of selling pressure, right? And it just seemed like nothing that we could do. It just kept breaking down, selling. We think this was Armistice just selling off shares to try to, maybe they had a short position on Ethereum, because think about this. Who had all the knowledge in this deal? There's only two parties. It was Ethereum and it was Armistice. So Armistice, knowing that they were going to lend and dilute down at these levels, could have bought puts back here, or not puts, could have shorted back here and then pushed the price down, knowing that they were running out of cash and they were going to do a deal, right? So they could have shorted up here in the high twos, and then basically knowing that they were going to basically, have Ethereum dilute, they would have basically took those 6 million shares and pushed it down. They didn't care about taking the loss on, because they paid 190 for them. They didn't care about taking the loss down here, selling these shares off, because they probably made more money shorting the stock than it was actually from 190 down to what, like, you lose 80 cents, but you gained essentially net if you were short at 270s. So just throwing that out there. That's possibly what we could have seen, is basically these guys knew that they were going to short, and maybe they started shorting up here. I mean, remember, these guys have known the stock, and they also have been the ones lending the money out to Ethereum. So, like, they could have been shorting all this time. And eventually, knowing that they would get these extra shares, and they had warrants on that to cover their hedge, basically, they would have just basically shorted the crap out of the stock and also sold off their actual shares, the 6 million shares over the course of time, because we had no volume during any of this time, right? If you look at the volume levels, we had like nothing. So it would kind of make sense if you think about it, if they shorted up here and then pushed the stock price down by selling off shares while shorting. And then as they basically let their foot off the brakes, they came back up here, and now we're going to be chopping around this area. This is about what the stock is probably worth, book value, roughly right now. So it wouldn't surprise me to see some consolidation probably right here in the 120s to 110s. Like, this is about what I think the stock's worth at this point right now, if you're looking, like, honestly at book value. Now, if we get earnings and they're improving, then that's going to obviously change things. But for right now, it wouldn't shock me to see a consolidation in this area again before they, the earnings happen. And then that's going to be basically their cue to either, run it back up, or to go ahead and just continue on what they're doing. Let's see. If someone had knowledge of puts way before dilution happened, because I sold 250 puts for 41 cents, they knew it was going to drop. Yeah, I think these guys knew. So you have to remember, these guys, this is like all sandbox game to them. Like they basically can push the price wherever they want because there's no volume to fight them, right? Retail has no impact, and we don't have any like we're not bringing in new players that are adding money to this. All of us are just stuck. So most of us are adding here and there when we have like large dips, but for the most part, nobody's buying every day. You know when we bought? We bought during these runs, right? We bought during these runs. We bought during these runs. That's when the volume was high. And then since then, the volume's bled off, and now they can kind of do whatever they want with the stock, right? So, like, they could have been shorting all in this range and then basically just taking the 6 million shares they got, 6.6 or whatever it was, and just basically bled it off. Like, they dumped a whole bunch of stay to get it down here. They let us sit, let the RSI cool off, and then they pushed it down for the final thing. And then this is when they closed their short position and then probably profited a bunch, but it also allowed the stock to run back up. So let's see. 125 was Capital IQ's low range on ATER. 4 was the high. Once Armistice unloads the warrants, yes. Yeah. No, totally understand, John. So basically, if you want to, like, my honest opinion, I think at some point we're going to have a run-up just because I think these guys have all those warrants they want to probably unlock, right? So they'll probably, if this is a good earnings or even like a halfway decent earnings where like margins are improving, they may decide to run it up and profit off these things. So that's kind of where I've been on this. We know we have to get above this line right here for them to be profitable. So if you're able to get if you are new to the play and you get in down here, you'll probably make money on Ethereum. If you've been averaging down since 19 and you're sitting there at 5, it's going to be harder for you to be profitable unless you've averaged down enough to kind of get yourself in this range. Like if you're in this range right here, you're going to at least be able to break even or profit. So it just all depends on what you're able to do. The problem is whenever anything is down the most, nobody wants to touch it until it flies. And then you go, because remember down here, like everybody was talking about delisting. Everybody was, woe is me. This stock's going to zero. And then all of a sudden within like a week, it basically flew up from like 67 cents. It touched up here to like 162 within, what was that, like a week? And people all of a sudden were like, oh my God, like, everything's fine again. Like, how it works. But nobody was buying down here, right? Because we thought it might hit like 50 cents. And when it started getting a couple green days, nobody believed it until it gapped up and then went. And then, you can see this is when they probably covered a bunch of short positions. And you can see how fast the stock flies if there's any volume. So, let's see. Armistice may not want to weigh because I'm slowly growing a cell wall. You by yourself are setting up that wall. All right. I wasn't talking about delisting Anon, but I knew the rules were an ATER had a lot of options not to delist. Yeah, I mean, I was never worried about delisting. Like, there's just too many things that could have, essentially, like, there's a million things you could do. You could do a reverse split. You can, there was just enough options out there because ATER still got people that are willing to take their shares. When you have no other options but to do, for example, like, hey, what's up, Fish? How are you, bud? He is now known as Wall Street Wizard on our Discord server, but good to see you. You got our buddies here. We're all talking some shop. I'm excited also for, I actually started watching some, Discord bot, like, building Python videos, and I'm going to try to at least get in there. I also need to grab some old computers, and we're going to try to set them up as servers. So we're going to be able to get some alerts and scrape some. We got a guy, I think it's EL, who has some experience with Python, so we're going to go ahead and get some scraping going on, and hopefully be able to. I'll see if I can write a bot that can basically kick out like, hey, we're seeing high volume on this one, and we're going to add another layer onto that. Oh, it's you. Oh, good. Are you EL? You're LK on here. It's confusing. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's kind of like what we're hoping we're going to be able to do. What's up, man? Yeah, so we want to be able to do that and also filter in dilution and other landmines that might have, that's the one thing a lot of these, they can give you all the information, but unless you actually compare it against like, okay, is there any landmines like dilution, it can be dangerous because all you're looking at is short interest versus actual like, okay, what's the big picture on this thing? So, but yeah. Oh, it's L? Like it's L. LK, L. All right. And then we got Fish in here. We got all the crew in here. So that's good. All right. So yeah, that's going to be the goal. We're going to try to make the server a little bit better. Add some toys to it. Should I start selling the wall at $199? You're getting out before Armistice, huh? And Craig Hallam. I mean, they put out a $3 price target on this thing. Like they're going to run this up at some point in the next couple of months. So it's just a matter of we're trying to figure this out and see if we can make sure that people get out. If they want to get out or if they want to build it long. I think at this point, if they start improving by the time the third quarter earnings happens, it's possible because what do we say? This was first quarter, this is fourth, this is third. So sometime in around August, they're hoping to be positive EBITDA. Like, it could be. So, yeah, we can do GNS. And I think we were supposed to do SI, right? That was one of the requests. SI was Silvergate Capital. Dilution may not matter for this one. Ton of short interest, though. Why is the short interest so high on this thing? Institutions actually own this thing, too. It's a bank. What is going on with this thing? So they're saying the board violated and made false and misleading statements. Interesting. Did they lie about, like, their capital? I mean, this thing's came down significantly. I mean, this is the lowest it's been. Ton of short interest. But I mean, you've got a lot of funds in on this. How are their financials? Most banks aren't that rough of shape. Yeah, I mean, they have more cash on hand. Interest has gone down significantly. Total assets. That's why. There's a ton of deposits are less. So liability-wise, it hasn't really changed too much. But, I mean, they still have a positive shareholder equity. And they do have cash on hand. So unless this lawsuit's going to, like, completely screw them, if it is a big deal, though, that's going to be something they have to pay out of pocket for all these lawyer fees. And so, I mean, interesting. Yeah, this one could be interesting. Now, granted, like, what do they have any warrants or? I don't see any warrants. Is there any sort of? Convertibles. So they've got some conversion of Class B to Class A. Let's see. They do have preferred stock. The company issued and sold fourth of interest on those fixed, but that's, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I mean, this is just me skimming, but like, they're non-voting. So there is, I guess, a possibility of these B's becoming A's, which will dilute a little bit, but I mean, it's a Maryland corporation, investment bank. I mean, I don't see a ton of cash and cash equivalents have gone down significantly, though, right? Securities are high. Did they make a bunch of bad bets and now they're basically stuck? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out like where the warts are on this one, because you don't have a stock that's 60% shorted unless they've got some serious warts. I mean, just a quick glance at the balance sheet shows that they look like they have a bunch of securities that they may be high risk. Like this is maybe like they took on some bad choices and then these guys, word gets around, which is why they're getting shorted and the stock's getting pushed down. But, overall, that's interesting. Let's see. Is there a lockup period? So we can look at that. What do you think? Lockup. It's all blockchain. What do you think I should put for keywords for that? They've got real estate loans. Yeah, I'm seeing blockchain. Troubled debt restructurings. Let's see. A loan is identified as a troubled debt restructuring. Has experienced financial difficulties. There's got to be a reason why this stock is 60% shorted. I mean, like that's high. So, I mean, 4 buys, 5 holds, 2 sells. You got a trade signal on February 15th, which was back here. So right here, you get a trade signal. It's gotten pushed down since then. Shares outstanding is low, so they have a low float on this thing. Is that 83? No, that can't be right. Let's take a look at this. Utilization's high. Okay, so it's been high for a while. Shares on loan has been gradually going up. Cost to borrow still high. FTDs are starting to build up. It's not on reg show. Securities lending. Yeah, so I mean, there's got to be a reason why this thing's. So they're saying that 82% of the free float is shorted by Ortex's guess. 2 days to cover right now based off the volume. Where's the poop? I don't know if you guys know that expression. When you have kids or a dog When something doesn't seem right, you have to ask yourself, where's the poop? Something's off with this. 70% of the free float is shorted. Now they're saying 82%. There's something that we're missing. Live short interest. Cost to borrow is really not that high, though. Like, I'm just looking back at the history. I mean, it's 14%, but I mean, isn't like ATER about that same? Insider trading, that could be. And if that's true, then there's going to be a huge issue with that. But like, all right, so this is one that we need to research because there's got to be something to this. Like, overall, it looks like a decent, like, that's a lot of short interest. But I can't imagine that they would keep shorting it if they didn't know something that we didn't know. Right? Like, I'm just looking here. Like, there's got to be something we're missing here. That's a lot of... Like, they're hammering this thing down. Yeah, I've slept with the CEO's wife, too. Yeah, I mean, something's wrong here. All right, who wants to figure out why SI is doing this? I mean, it looks like it's going to explode. That's what it looks like. Just on, like, that's a really high amount of short interest as far as, like, if that's true, if there's really almost 23 million shares shorted on a stock that only has, what was it, 30 million, something like that, for the shares outstanding. It was like 31, under 32 million, and insiders own, could probably do it this way. No, there we go. SI Silvergate. What do insiders own? Insiders own... I thought it showed you on this. Maybe I have to go to here. So institutional shares long. Shares outstanding. This is showing that they own more shares than... That could be the Class B shares, though. But they're showing 35, and the shares outstanding is 31. I'm pretty sure normally when you click on this, it shows you a thing up here that shows you the insider, like, information. Do they have a split? Because all the numbers look the same. Something's weird here. No, but I'll show you. Like, for example, if we go to Tyrion's filings, right, and I click on short interest, or not short interest, but insiders, normally you have this thing up here. So if we do insiders, if I go to trading insiders, up here it shows you 16 million shares, 21% of the free float for Ethereum. For this one, though, when I click on insiders, it literally is missing that section here. And I don't know why. It's so weird. Why is that? Like, short interest, it shows it there. Right, 72% of the float shorted. I mean, this thing's getting up there on the squeeze score as well. Like, you can see it was number 9. So, yeah, this thing could go Yeah, I mean, so to let anyone that's new know, basically DTC is another one of these where we saw something weird. So DTC is solo brands, and what we found out was on the first glance at it, we looked at it and we went, okay, well, insiders own 33 million, which is like half the float, basically, right? And then we went here to owners and we went, okay, look at this. Institutions own 75 million of this thing. So how do institutions own 75 plus 33 million and the shares outstanding is only 63? This is saying they institutions own 120% of the stock, right? It doesn't really make sense. But then you come to learn that basically that this has class A and class B, that they're not differentiating. So if you go here to like DTC, you'll see that even though it says it's 76% owned by institutions, which is actually true, you still have a float that's there because of the Class A and Class B shares. So it could be something to do with them transferring over the Class Bs, which will dilute some, but something's just funky. All right, this may have to be one of those, like, we need to like dig into it as a group tomorrow. If anyone's down for that, we can do this SI together, because on the surface it looks like if this thing gets some attention, then this thing could pop. But there's going to be something that happens. Like, what's the latest? What is this? Let's see. So Citadel's LLC is involved. So spidey senses are already tingling. What is this? This is a Rule 13D-B1B. So this is a 13G. So Citadel is saying that they've got 1.6 million, which is over 5% of the float. This is based on the shares outstanding as of October 31st, which was their filing. So they're showing that they have voting power and they own over. So Citadel has Citadel Securities Group. They also have this. Is that still the same one? No, this one's Citadel LP. This one is Citadel GP LLC. Ken Griffith, our buddy, right? But it looks like he's long on this. So this was the 13G that they. Susquehanna's in on this. They got 7% of the stock. Is this going to be one of those where they basically just pump it and then get retail to FOMO in as they sell? Could be. Alan loves Ken Griffin. The guy freaks me out. Doesn't blink. Just guy, textbook narcissist, like weirdo. Just what do you do with that much money? Like, that's one thing I've never understood. And not only that, but he's buying politicians, which also always bothers me, because these guys don't play one side; they play both sides. That's how you know the whole system's like screwed up, is because it's not like they're just like, oh, I'm going to support Republicans or I'm going to support Democrats. The smart ones buy both sides, because there's going to be people that are going to be corrupt on each side. So what you do is, that's right, don't talk about this stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, this looks like you've got the big players already in. They all filed 13Gs on the 14th. So it looks like they're basically either fighting somebody, like these big guys are coming together to squeeze somebody else, or it's one of these where they're just going to pump this and dump it. And none of them would surprise me, because Susquehanna did that to Tyrion, so did Renaissance, and I noticed both their names in the filings. So something's going on with this. But if you're not greedy with this one, this could pop. So, but we need to find the warts. Like there's some sort of warts here, and we need to find them. So this might be a good project for tomorrow, diving into SI and seeing what it does. Okay. Let's do this. What were the other ones that we needed to look at? We already looked at Tyrion. GNS. So GNS, I think, is just sitting there. It's they want to hammer it down. They're having trouble doing it. I'm guessing they're not on reg show, are they? I think enough liquidity got added back in when they unlocked the S3 stuff. But I mean, this stock's holding up a lot better than people thought it was. Everyone was like, oh, this is just a pump and dump. But you can see, yeah, the utilization's gone back down because they have liquidity again back in this thing. It's not on the threshold. They were having issues here when it was really, really moving, but like, they don't show any FTDs at this point. But maybe it's because it's not getting reported yet. Cost to borrow still high. Shares on loan has came down. And that's probably the liquidity that they were dealing with. Because when this thing only had 10 million shares roughly as like a float, then this thing was having liquidity problems. But once they unlock those S3s, they're going to be able to push this down again. It might close a gap. I think I showed you guys here. All right, so we had some pivot points. It looked like it was in a downtrend, and so far it's broken down. This is where I would expect some consolidation to happen. Somewhere in this like high fours, and see kind of what happens with this, because they're going to basically push it down now that they have liquidity. There's also a gap down here in the 2s. And there's also a gap here sub 1. I don't know if it's going to go back down that low. But, I mean, the ultimate goal, I would imagine, is to basically extend this out for a while and maybe fill these gaps. And then they may be able to head back up depending on... I will tell you this. I don't think these guys are going to... I don't think the NFT dividend is going to do a thing. I don't think that particular strategy has worked ever. There was another ticker, I believe. It was like a health company. I'd heard of it before. I can't remember what their name was, but they did the same thing. They tried to issue some sort of like NFT dividend, and eventually, I don't think it ever mattered because they figured out it wasn't going to be able to stick. Like they could basically. Half the people didn't register for it, and so they never had to pay out on the thing because most people weren't, educated enough to know what was really going on. It was like something health med or something like that, and they pushed out this NFT dividend and it didn't do a thing. So I have a feeling that's going to be the same sort of thing. They've also lost some steam, and I feel like at this point right now they need to figure out like how to capitalize on this. The stock price is still holding up though relatively well for what we assumed was going to be just a simple pump and dump. But for those of you that took profits on this, that's smart, and then you might be able to find another re-entry point if you want to go long on it. But overall, the company right now, I don't think knows how to. They're not making a ton of revenue, but at the same time, they aren't burning that much cash, and they had a pretty good cash position going into this. They had basically 2 years of cash. So they've got time for this thing to kind of go a little bit longer. So that's kind of my, yeah. The thing about the NFT dividend is it's all off exchange, non-American. Yeah, so I don't think they're going to be able to enforce basically the NFT dividend, which is going to basically just be a womp womp. And then some retail is going to go, well, I thought that was supposed to squeeze. And then they might take profits because they're still up. Like a lot of people bought in down here on this stock or even in this range. And, you know, I told people, I was like, I can't in good conscience tell people to buy the stock when these two gaps are lower and it's already ran up like 400%. Like, yeah, the directors on the one of the former directors of the FBI is on the board, which is a good thing. But this is going to take much longer. So the question is, how much patience is retail going to have, and how much is retail going to hold while the stock's getting pushed down? Because everyone thought this was going to be an easy squeeze, and they didn't realize that 11 million shares got flooded back onto the market. And most retail at this point, it would take a while for retail to lock up the float when it's sitting here, you know, in the 8 to 5 range. It's still pretty expensive, and there's not that much interest for the stock just because it doesn't have the name recognition. So if they keep up the pressure and they keep up the PR, then you've got a shot. So. Yeah, I think the FBI just is more of a, you know, the guy's probably pretty determined to have rules enforced and might have the ability to go to, you know, other agencies that he used to work with and say, hey, listen, I'm on the board of this thing. This is not right what these guys are doing to these stocks. And, you know, it could at least get some eyeballs on there. But, you know, the FBI works closely with the Department of Justice, which is the one thing that nobody's really... The SEC doesn't do anything. Let's be honest. Like, we've talked about this before. Have I looked into BBIG yet? Ugh. I have, unfortunately. Mainly just for other people. It's not good. And that was one of the stocks I warned people about long ago because they got attention, and then I had to explain to people the dilution, like, I don't know, like a year and some change ago, and everyone was mad at me. All the BBIG people, I got banned from posting in there, just like I did for Bed Bath & Beyond, because I was explaining what dilution was, and people got mad because they were like, we're going to squeeze this to the moon. I'm like, they are literally actively diluting right now with an ATM, and you guys are trying to squeeze into an ATM. Like, what's... Why do you think that's a thing? But yeah, for GNS, just to kind of finish up, I do want to see these gap, at least this gap specifically, to fill before I re-enter at any point. But I do think if they kind of keep this up over time, this thing will eventually, if retail keeps adding and holding, this stock can go up higher. So, you know, you could retest this, you know, basically like 1170 area, 1180 area. At some point, it's just a matter of, will it break down first and then go back up if retail sticks with it, or if this thing loses steam, this earnings is going to be pretty far away for, you know, for a lot of people to hold and see what happens. But you'll get a better sense of financials there. It's just, that's a while away. So if this kind of keeps in this trend, you're looking at probably like a 3 to like maybe high 2s at some point before you get some more information on what the company's doing and how stuff is improved or not improved. I'll pull up BBIG real quick just to show you. So BBIG has basically been consolidating in this range forever. You've got a ton of gaps to the upside, but this is a company that's diluted the crap out of their shareholders. And going through a lot of bad management changes. I told you anything with Ted Farnsworth, just stay away from. The guy is basically a snake oil salesman. And so, okay. So we can see, here's a problem, right? The company's out of cash again. It's already sitting here sub $1, right? It's at 50 cents roughly. And they've been under $1 for a while. So here's the $1 mark. So here, this was below. Let me just zoom in a little bit so we can just do this. Where's $1? let's just pretend that's perfect. You basically, since October, have been sub $1. You have not broken above this line. Therefore, you are at risk of this company being delisted. What that would mean is basically that you would still own the shares, but they would be basically locked up, and the only way you could basically sell them is to go off exchange. So an OTC market would be the only way you could sell your shares. That's usually not excuse me, not a good thing. Technically, you still own the company, but it's just a lot harder to get rid of your shares. Could the company bounce back at some point? But just this company's out of money. Here's the deal. They're out of money. They've already diluted the crap out of their shareholders, right? And this is the stuff I was telling people. I'm like, listen, this is a stock you need to be very careful of, because they were blocking anyone that was actually talking any common sense, which was they're massively diluting on their shareholders, and people are just, not ignoring it because they thought that I was being a shill. And I kept trying to tell people, listen, this is a stock that's super dangerous to be holding right now, and everyone ignored me. And now you're looking at being delisted. I mean, they sold their soul and their shareholders out. And now you're sitting here with 233 million shares outstanding. You have no money, right? Because they still have, at the current cash burn of 42 million a quarter, you basically have a matter of weeks before they're out of cash and they need to do something. So, I don't know if any of these things will be ever pushed up. Because most of these guys, if you look at the names on this, Hudson, Armistice, they all probably were short the stock. And they've also got these convertibles, right? It's just massive amounts of dilution, and this is a stock that probably will go and get delisted at some point. Yeah. So, I mean, the short interest isn't even that high on these things. It's probably just people shorted and they're just waiting. This is what the death spiral financing was. If you wanted to know what Michael Burry was mocking the BBBY shareholders, the Bed Bath & Beyond shareholders, this is a prime example of what basically he was talking about. He said, he tweeted, it soon, like, memesters are going to learn about death spiral financing. Because with these convertibles, and literally that's what happened to this company. This company had all these convertibles, right? A bunch of convertibles. They used them all up, right? And the stock went from basically like being squeezed because it had 14 million shares outstanding to 233 million shares outstanding, and now they don't have enough money to basically be raised to make their their payments, and it's a bad situation. So that's what's going on with BBIG, and this is a prime example of what people can learn about. Could you get a spike? Sure, but like it's not enough to get yourself out of what you probably, this is not what I would be averaging down on. So you started saying something about GME a while ago, then popped up. Yes. Sorry. I mean, if you couldn't tell, I obviously have ADD, so I bounce around a lot on these live streams because I see chats coming through. All right, so check this out. This 22 line has been a very important line across, because this is basically where it wants to hang out naturally. Like, it gets down these levels, it pops, it gets back down to these levels, and kind of will consolidate in some ways, go above it, below it. But here's what we've been kind of looking into. So GME right now doesn't have a huge thing, but it's got 22% like short interest, and we can back it up here. So here's GME, right? So GME right now roughly has, we'll go here to the overview. Let's just say they've got 52 million shares outstanding right now, or sorry, 52 million shorted right now, which is about 20% of the free float. here's where I think things are going to get interesting, right? So we were looking at some of the 13Fs on, what is that guy holding on dilution tracker? Wait, what? It's a satellite. Random, it's a satellite. Get your mind out of the gutter there, buddy. All right. So the 13Fs right now are showing that some of the big guys who were in GameStop back in the day, they were mainly short, are now going long on it, which is interesting. And I think the reason why they're doing that is to basically be able to control. So having shares like that obviously allows you to lend them out, but it also is kind of like a hedge. If I don't know if they're still short. We don't know these things because they don't have to actually disclose short positions for whatever reason. Like, you have to disclose when you're long, but you don't have to disclose when you're short. Go figure, right? So we've noticed some of these guys are going long on this. So the question is, are they doing that so they can sell out when the stock's maybe moving up so they can keep sell pressure on? It's possible. What we do know is this. So GameStop, basically GameStop has been going up significantly in the squeeze score, right? So all these things are lining up. Like, short interest is like pretty high still. We know for a fact that this is a stock that, the GameStop apes, I'm one of them, are DRSing their shares. And I buy GameStop every 2 weeks. And I just been basically dollar cost averaging up, actually, because I got in early. But I was going to say, in this case, I just keep adding. Like, it's not like a huge amount of money, but I just keep every week buying more, or every 2 weeks buying more. And if you see, the days to cover is 17 days. So this thing, when it does start moving up, when eventually shorts realize that they're not going to be able to push it down much, much more, I mean, I think the thing that I thought was most interesting was here. And I'll pull up real quick. If I do this, if I go to Super Snuck, I think what we saw was, I'll do a search real quick. What was it? I think I typed in float. I think it was this one. I'll bring this over so you can see it. So, you've got 304 million shares outstanding, right? This number I had a little bit differently on mine, but that's fine. Let's just go off theirs. So what they said was basically between retail, plan, and book, there's 83 million shares probably DRS right now. This means that right now on a, what's GameStop's, what's their market cap right now? $6.6 billion that retail shareholders own. What was it? I have to pull it up over here. Hold on, sorry. Did I close it? I must have closed it. My bad. Let me click on it again. There. Oh, no, I put it over here. Sorry. Right here. So this is the entire shares outstanding. And it's showing you right here that retail owns more than all the insiders. They own more than all the or segments of the institutions, right? And they've got mutual funds that have this and ETFs that hold this. But overall, look at this. They're saying basically retail has locked up this pie right here, this segment of the pie chart. That's a lot of shares on the $6.6 billion company. And what they're saying is overall, my guess is at some point GameStop is either going to have to make money or they're going to have to just dilute a little bit more to raise some cash to keep going down the path that they're going, which is trying to figure out a way to become profitable again. But at this point right now, that's a lot of shares they've locked up, right? So you sit here and these are insiders, then these are institutions, right? So these are ones where, I don't know if it's a picture, so I can't do that. But will they let this run pretty soon? And the answer probably is getting towards yes, which is why institutions are adding again. Because it seems to be that, I'm just taking a look here. These are shares that are getting lent out, but you figure if there's 50 million shares that are lent out right now, that's not a lot for liquidity at this point. I mean, if you kind of figure out, let's see. So, yeah, I mean, the free float right now, retail basically is just slowly locking away this entire stock. And so this thing's got a floor at some point, but I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, you could see if it would get down to this 11 again. If we had the market crash, could it get down here to 11 again? But if it does, I bet you that's a spring, and this thing goes flying back up into like the 30s. So I'm just saying, like, this is getting really interesting on the stock. The fact that institutions are starting to buy back in. People that mock the stock, like Steve Cohen with 0.72, he's bought shares. So, like, first they mock you, then they try to discredit you, then they join you, right? That's the bastardized version of, what's essentially happening here, which is I think that at some point they're going to have to let GameStop go back up. And it's going to piss off a lot of people. But at the same time, I told people I don't believe that they are going to let this MOAS. I think they will let the stock go up again significantly, but they are not going to allow this thing to basically do what it did here, which was like essentially getting out of control. I think what's more likely to happen is what they did with Tesla, which I'll just show you an example of that. So look at Tesla. So back in the day, right? I gotta zoom out a bit. So Tesla back in the day came out, and it was a stock that nobody really, saw a whole lot of like interest in. It kind of started going through, right? And then shorts started climbing in. Shorts were always around in the beginning. Like, let's do a 5-year. Right? Do you think this is a natural run? Because I can tell you right now it's not. Why did Tesla go like this? The honest answer is because Tesla had a ton of short interest that was built up, and instead of letting it, so this was like a squeeze, it got pushed down, and then look at this run, right? So I think what happened was they eventually, every time that Tesla would like went on earnings, like I remember buying the stock back in like 16, and then it ran up a little bit, and then it dipped down, and I was looking at it going, okay, well, the stock's really gotten, kind of beat down. It went from like 40, or was it 40 at one point, down to like like tens, and then it just started all of a sudden. I think they started having to cover, and so Tesla eventually pushed up. They raised money during these things. They issued out ATMs to raise even more cash, which kind of fed the whole cycle. I think that's what's going to end up happening with GameStop, is that GameStop will basically fund their recovery and growth through basically shorts having to close out positions on them, and then eventually they will become relevant by buying profitable, video game companies and adjacent stuff. That's my honest belief, is it's going to be more like something like this, where those who stuck with it for the long time, just like Tesla shareholders stuck with it for a long time, they got rewarded by basically becoming a real company and joining the S&P 500. That's what I think eventually will happen to GameStop. But, Yeah, they don't have a choice. Like GameStop shareholders are not selling. Like most of the people who basically were like, okay, this didn't work out, they already sold. This now is basically the gamers and the people who are just been like the hardcore believers, and they're just continuing to lock up the shares. So yeah, like GameStop buys Tesla and Amazon. No, 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 no. But I do think that they will literally be able to fund themselves back into the S&P 500 at some point if this keeps up, because they will use the shorts covering to raise more money in cash. They already have like $1 billion, and then they're going to basically be able to buy profitable companies, add that to their thing, and slowly, What happened to Tesla is called a convexity squeeze. Ooh, I get to learn something. Let's do this. Convexity in bonds. GME. Ooh. I won't do this now, but I think Steam does pretty well on their own. I don't think Steam would be for sale personally. I'd have to look at, we don't have access to Steam's books, I don't think, right? Because they're public, or they're a private company. We just know like revenue. Steam takes a 30% cut. Oops. Yeah, I mean, they generated 3.1 billion. I think they would, if they were going to be on sale, you would have to buy them for multiples. And so I don't think that Steam is an acquisition target at this point, unless GameStop raised enough money where they could just do it. So, I mean, you're talking about 30 million users online at the same time. They've got a huge base. So if you raised enough money where you could buy Steam, GameStop would all of a sudden be a behemoth. So just throwing that out there. Yeah, Steam's good. Convexity squeeze are basically a long drawn out short squeeze. Yeah, and that's kind of what I think is going to happen with GameStop. I don't think they're going to do a MOAS where, the stock just runs to like $300 again, or $400. It was $500 pre-market at one point, I remember, because I actually looked at it that morning of the 28th. So, yeah. Is that the same thing I do on the toilet? Hopefully with your squatta potty, right? What do you think what their stock price will be? I mean, if they raise enough cash, I mean, I think they could be worth like 40s again at some point. Like 40s to 50s if they raised cash through an ATM or did something to raise, it's just, I'm looking at this going, something's going on here. Like, institutions are buyback in, like, people that were mocking it are now owning it. Like, something's up. So this is another one that, like, on the surface, I'm going, something's weird here. And so, I think you can hold it down for a while, but TSM, let's take a look. Should be a big company, shouldn't have, not a lot of short interest. Institutions did sell a good amount. Semiconductor, right? TSM. Are they the ones that have the contract with Apple and all the big guys? I think like they're one of the larger ones. But I mean, I would imagine they reduced their position because they know that, number one, Taiwan is a potential China target, and number two, it's like that whole region's going to be risky if there's a war over there. Number two, America just put a bunch of money into stuff that will take years to develop, but I mean, as things right now go, if Apple's like reducing their amount of products that are going through there and finding new places, this is a stock that obviously was probably overvalued at that point. So, yeah, I mean, let's take a look at the chart real quick. They left a gap there. But I mean, this was like during the heyday when like everybody was out, so their margins were amazing. I think it's going to come back to earth. My guess would be it's going to be down in the 50s at some point. So if you wanted to go long, I think a lot of these companies sold out during this time frame. Like this honestly looks like, if you draw this out, this looks like distribution completely. Like this is Wyckoff distribution. This was the final one before the push down. And you may have this like pop up and then it's going to probably come back down. And this thing probably is more naturally around $42 a share. So I do think this gap will fill at some point. So if I was looking at this like short term, I would think this thing's got more room to the downside before it finds support, but we'd have to look at, a bunch of different things on it. I would check honestly at this point, fib lines on it and kind of just see like some of the retracements on it, but I'm getting tired now. I'm getting burned out. So TSM doesn't make Doritos. Yeah, so AMC, just to throw it out there, AMC right now is, I think, doing arbitrage, meaning that a lot of the people that were short AMC are buying APE to basically offset, because eventually what's going to happen is this. APE should go through 100 to 1 reverse split. And so if you have, for example, like 900 million APE shares, they would become 90 million APE shares. So eventually the new float, I believe, after the reverse split will be like 144 million. So your shares will be worth more, but APE's going to go away. And so I think the reason why AMC's like stuff right now is out of whack is because all these like shorts are basically just doing arbitrage through whenever it makes sense to buy APE, they buy APE. And so you're going to see a whole lot of like stuff happen with this new, once they vote on it though, it's going to just be an opportunity for them to either get back in and reshort if they don't think AMC is going to be able to, continue to. AMC's biggest problem was they were so bad off. Like, they have these, if conversion proposals are approved, APE and AMC will undergo 10 to 1 reverse split. So 930 million APEs will be converted into 93 million. Yeah, I did that right. And the 517 million will turn into 51.7. So that's combined 144. So I was right on that. Okay. So, I mean, this number will probably go down significantly as they arbitrage across with APE. So, I don't think it's you. You're saying you don't think it's going to be quantum. It's going to be AI for right now. AI seems to be anything that has AI seems to be good, except for Ethereum, because basically it was like a glorified Excel spreadsheet, I think. But anyone that actually had, quantum is also really expensive and really power, intensive to use. So I don't think that's going to be an everyday thing until they get that into the ability to, quantum computers are very incredible machines. They can run millions of calculations every second, but they're also super, super, like that's not something everyday people have access to. It doesn't scale well at this point right now because of the technology, but at some point they will be. But at that point, we could build a freaking quantum computer to, crunch all our stocks, and we should, let the computers take over at that point because they're smarter than us. But, I would imagine the biggest players like the Citadels, they probably have quantum computing already working for them. So, all right. I'm going to get off here, guys. I appreciate you hanging out with me. Good to see you guys. And if you guys wanted to work on SI and some other tickers tomorrow, we can do that inside the Discord. Just hit me up and we'll kind of crunch the numbers and see if we can find where the poop is. Because there's going to be poop somewhere. Doesn't make sense. All right. You guys have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Good night.